Hello and welcome to Imperium Code channel. So in our previous sessions, we have discussed why you should not be client obsessed. And in our current video, we will be discussing a topic that has been brought up to us by a lot of people that we've met either at workshops that we've hosted or at events that we've participated in, and sometimes even by our clients or family members, close friends who are looking to start a new business. Sometimes they're looking to develop an idea and integrate it with their existing business, and sometimes it's when they want to start digitizing their business. And the topic is outsourcing versus hiring your own team. When should you actually do what? So let's say you want to digitize your existing business or start your own idea or anyway develop a certain software, you first start thinking about, okay, let me do it in-house, let me do it inside the company to keep everything under my control, under my supervision, etc., and to keep all of the, let's say, company or trade secrets within the company and not share them with any third party. So imagine you want to start recruiting. This is the first step. You need to start finding the right developers, the right team to lead this project under your supervision and to take it to the next level. The first thing you need to care about is to find the proper people who have a, let's say, background that is kind of related to your business so that they can actually understand what you want them to be doing and not only be technical people. That's the first problem. The second one is you need to find the people who are actually able to communicate together, have enough synergy, etc. Because even if you find a very smart back-end developer and a very smart front-end developer, assuming you want to build, let's say, a certain website or an application, you need to also make sure that these developers can actually communicate together well. They have similar coding standards. They have the same idea about, okay, how we're going to build the API, and the front ender is actually comfortable with the structure that the back ender usually or is used to building. So it's not only about finding people who know, it's about finding people who have the right background, are qualified, and are able to actually work together in this team. And then you have to also worry about the budget. So obviously you have to be paying these people a certain salary per month, which is usually not a very low number since there's a very big demand for developers and the supply is still much less. Um, so it's not really an easy decision for you to make. And there's a lot of issues that happen sometimes in this road. So, for example, sometimes you end up recruiting qualified people, but they don't have enough background related to your business model or like the industry. So you have to start with training them, giving them the right tools, allowing them to understand your processes, etc. And a lot of the times, an issue happens here is that after, let's say, 3 4 months, they end up not liking the work, or let's say at the end of the probation period they end up choosing something else, so they decide to leave your company and join another one, which means that you have lost time onboarding the team, you have lost three salaries at least, and you have lost even more time trying to find other qualified members and to be able to redo the whole cycle again. So train them again, etc. So you cannot really take this decision very lightly because it has a lot of implications. And sometimes they don't leave, but after, let's say, 6, 7 months of work, one of them gets sick or get injured or whatever. So what will happen in this case that is that your project will be delayed. You will have to try to find a backup in case there was a dependency on this person or not. So it gets even more and more complicated, and it even gets even more complicated when you have to start giving, let's say, holidays and vacations to those people. They start requesting vacations that are sometimes are during the same period, so you cannot afford all of your team um, going on a vacation at the same in the same period, because you need some progress at least to be done during that period, so on and so forth. So that's the first branch of, let's say, hiring your own team, assuming you found the right people and all of that. You will also need to account for those issues, other than the fact that after a year or so, you have to raise the salaries and all of that. Now, let's assume there's no issues there, and that all of the issues that I've mentioned are really they have a very low probability, and they don't end up occurring. What's actually happening, even if you're, let's say, paying a monthly salary, what's actually happening when you're hiring an employee, you find yourself that, okay, sometimes there are tasks that require, let's say, minimal amount of thinking, but they need to be done by this front ender. So, in other words, you need to change a certain color, or change the size of a certain button, or add something to a certain page, or remove a field from a certain page. So you're actually paying for hours, a fixed number. So it's, let's say, you're paying X dollars per month. So you're actually paying X divided by 30 and divided by 8 hours per day. So it's a certain rate per hour, and you're always paying that rate no matter what your employee is doing. So whether they are changing these little small stuff, or they are actually doing a or creating a new feature that requires a lot of critical thinking and a lot of knowledge. So, in other words, you could have done the same project with probably less time, or the same amount of time, but with at least less money when it comes to minding those really. So, when it comes to figuring out, and if you just pause for a second and think in an abstract way that, okay, I could have done these tasks at a a very lower rate than the actual rate that I'm actually paying for, if I had other employees who are less senior and have a lower salary. So you either end up hiring employees with lower salaries and lower, let's say, um, know-how, so they are more junior than the existing developers, or you have to just accept the fact and say, okay, sometimes it's gonna happen this way, sometimes is I'm gonna be profiting from the salary I'm paying, and I'll be receiving quality work at a fixed price, and sometimes you have to accept that, yeah, I might be paying more for something I could have been paying much less for. And the problem is not only here, the problem is that, okay, you're always benefiting as long as you are developing the software, because it's the hard part. You are actually creating the software, you're creating the structure, you're creating all of that. But then you will reach a phase where you have actually tested your solution and you have gone to market. And then all of the development that is required after that might be simple tweaks and simple features that needs to be done, and simple changes to be done to your solution as well. So even if you've profited well when you've actually developed your software, at the end of the development phase and once you reach the maintenance phase, you're actually paying a very big lump sum, a very big salary, just for someone to always be changing colors, adding features, and doing small stuff. Unless you have a very big project and you want to like build even more features and um, scale it exponentially, let's say. but it's rarely the case. So that's why it's really a case by case thing. Now, let's assume you did not end up hiring your own team and you chose to actually outsource your technology. And when you want to outsource your technology, you can either actually find a junior developer and then outsource that to them in case you're building, for example, a simple proof of concept and you don't care about the code quality, you just want to do it cheap, do it fast, reach a certain milestone by a certain date, and show it to the investors so you can actually fund your company. But you have to also keep in mind that if you do that, at the end of the road, after a month or two, and once you finish your presentation, all of the code and all of the things that have been done should be um, you should throw them away and then restart from scratch because you cannot scale a solution based on a dummy code or a on a let's say not so reliable structure. So you have to really be careful when you think like that. And you cannot rely on the junior developer to actually learn things on the go because no matter how fast learner he or she is, they will always make mistakes that other more senior developers wouldn't make and would save you a lot of time. So let's assume you've chosen to work with a senior developer and to outsource to a senior developer instead of a junior one and to build things properly. When it comes to outsourcing, the freelancers are mostly getting paid as a fixed rate per hour, and usually this rate per hour is higher than the employees rate, usual employees rate per hour. Um, because at the end also you don't have to pay insurance and all of that, so it might be kind of an equivalent cost, but sometimes it's not. Anyway, so once you're working with a senior developer, you're talking about a budget that's more than $40 per hour. A junior developer can be 10 to 20, and the mid developer can be 20 to 40, and sometimes even 20 to 60 or 80. It depends on the country they're working from, and there's a different and the economy they're in, and all of that. So even senior developers can go from like even $80 to $200, sometimes more per hour, and it's really a very big range, and it depends actually on what they're doing. And the thing is, the pricing is not really consistent. It's not like there's one rate that's a market standard and everyone follows. No, each freelancer has their own rate. So it's up to how you actually agree with that person on a fixed rate and move on from there. And this also presents you with the same kind of issues that you had, that we spoke about earlier. So, for example, when you want to, let's say, also change a color, you're actually paying $60 per hour or $80 per hour to change a certain color. So you end up also needing to build kind of a team, an outsourced team that's each and every person working from a different place, and it's even harder to align because each and every one has a different time zone probably or a different working hours. Some people work only in the weekends, others work only on the weekdays. But at least you know that after the project is done, you don't have to keep that overhead of the expenses and keeping them for minor stuff. You can just keep junior developers that would do the basic maintenance and use the senior ones whenever you end up needing them. So that's kind of a solution to the problem we spoke about before. However, unfortunately, it doesn't always end up the way you would have wished it would have, because a lot of developers, especially the senior ones, they end up getting a lot of projects. So once they finish your project, and even the junior ones, they would rather take a new project and do that rather than to stick around for the maintenance phase. And even if they did, they won't really have time for you. It's not like you will be the first priority, because other projects that are being built from scratch will pay much more than just them waiting for you to ask for a feature to change and then change that and then just keep waiting for something else. They have to always be taking projects so that they can actually sustain. So you're not the first priority after the project is delivered. And that's another issue when dealing with freelancers, other than the fact that sometimes they disappear, sometimes they're not accountable, sometimes there's a lot of miscommunication due to different factors, and it's really harder to manage that when they're not your employees, because everything is contract based, and whatever you forget telling them might you might end up reaching a dispute or a kind of let's say yeah um, issues will arise from it. So it's not really that sustainable. It works, but it really depends from one freelancer to another. If you ask right now 100 people or even 10 people about their experience with outsourcing, each and every one will give you a different answer. And each and every one will give you a good feedback on a certain phase and then a bad feedback on another, because some people or some freelancers are really good, let's say, with presenting quality work when it comes to front end development, but they deliver a backend that's not really good, or the opposite. And sometimes they are very good in communication, but they're very bad in coding. Sometimes they're very good in time management, but very bad in testing. So there is no consistent result. That's why at Imperium Code we have actually chosen to kind of present a hybrid solution. So uh, it's more than a hybrid solution. We actually realized that there is no process, and that's the main issue. There is no process that's actually governing things around, and it's not guiding things, and that's why you have inconsistencies. And we didn't want to get employees and limit our company's knowledge. That's another point. If you have employees, you will only be stuck with what they know, and you will have to train them to always get to know more technologies. And if they're only fixated on a certain technology, then your company will end up with a legacy code that's using a legacy technology. However, if you want to actually grow with the market, you have to always train them, always make sure that they're learning the new technologies. And sometimes they do not have enough time to learn because you have to keep up with the market and everything's changing fast. So sometimes you have to recruit even more people to do the newer tasks that require newer technologies, for example, in AR, and to enter the metaverse, while keeping the old team, because you cannot suddenly fire them to sustain your old legacy code, and bit by bit merge the two, etc. So it's a chaos. Anyway, so we chose at Imperium Code not to have employees, but also we implemented processes to actually qualify our contractors. So whether they are developers, UI UX experts, QA engineers, all of that, we decided to actually qualify them and to make sure that they're all working within the same code, they're all working with the same standards, they all have can present the client with a proper experience, and to make sure that they're never late on the deadline. And we have also implemented internally our backup mechanisms, so that in case one of the contractors did not, well, let's say, got a had a certain disease or got sick or had an accident, we have our own internal measures in order to replace that person and be able to continue with the project without adding or causing any damage on the client side. And this is something we were able to do because at heart we are programmers and we are technical people, so we know exactly each and every project what it actually needs in order to be done correctly. And before doing the project, we actually decompose everything. So We don't even price a fixed rate per hour. So what we do is when we decompose the project, when you decompose anything that's big and complex, imagine you have a very complex, let's say, equation, and if you want to try to solve it all at once, you will get lost sometimes. Depends on how used you on these. But when you decouple this and when you like break it down into smaller pieces, you will find that, oh, it's actually simple. You will solve each and every piece alone, and then you will take all of the results and then combine them together to get the final result. And that's exactly what we do. We decompose, we decouple the project into smaller phases, smaller tasks. We recognize what each and every task requires in terms of effort and time, and accordingly, we believe in simplicity in nature. So everything is really simple once you break it down, once you get to know its essence. So depending on how simple that task is, we assign it to the proper contractor, and we end up paying. So let's say we want to change a color, we will be paying $5 to change a color within these 2 hours. And sometimes you're changing a color across 200 files. Okay, you need 10 days, and you might be paying $200. And other times you need to develop a component that has an AI engine, and sometimes it might need 4 hours with an MIT expert, but they would end up getting paid $10,000 for those 4 hours because of the value and um, scale of that component. So it really depends, but the trick is the thing is you actually end up as a client, they end up at the end of the day paying exactly the value and the worth of the components or the project that they are requesting. So they're not paying according to the market price. So a lot of providers, they look, okay, a lot of people now are asking for a delivery app. So a delivery app should cost 60,000, even if it would actually cost them $20,000. They would just inflate the pricing because it's something that has a very high demand. We don't care about that, and we don't do that. We always price things in a way that is fair for the client and it's fair for the developers, so that the developers or contractors who are working on that task are getting what they deserve, and the clients are actually paying for the value for the component or the requirement, the project that they're actually um, requesting at um, the actual um, price that it actually deserves. And this is how we decided to really approach things. And the thing is, when you think about it this way, you realize that, okay, it's not a necessity to have an in-house team or to just work with one outsourced developer. The thing is, you have to find the balance. You have to find the balance in everything in a way that it doesn't hurt the business, keeps the quality, also does not affect security, and all of that. And also, you have to consider all of the overheads that exist when you have to hire your own team, or when you have to, let's say, work with a company that has their own team. So, for example, you're not paying for the actual just salaries of those developers when you're outsourcing to a company that has an employee, let's say, employees. You're actually paying for the salaries of those employees, and you're actually also paying for the overhead of the accounting department, the legal department, so on and so forth. So it's not always as simple or as straightforward as you might think when you want to start dealing with someone, whether it's a freelancer or hiring your own team. You have to also get to know the hidden costs. You have to understand what's happening under the hood, and you have to understand the actual value of the project you're paying for, because at the end you need to generate a return on investment. So you need to understand that, okay, I'm paying XYZ for a project to be done in that amount of time, am I actually putting my resources in the right place or not? And can I put them in somewhere else where I can finish faster at same quality, but then a cheaper price, let's say, or maybe the same price, but faster. So it doesn't really need to revolve about the amount of money you spend. Sometimes you spend a very big amount of number, let's say $10,000 or $11,000, or let's say $50,000 or $54,000. There's no much of a difference between these two numbers once you're talking about big numbers. I mean, $4,000 is not going to make that much of a difference, especially if it's, let's say, 1 million or 1,004,000 dollars. It stops making a difference. What really makes a difference in business is time. You need to be able to develop your solution in a way that you can hit the market and hit it fast, so that you can ride the wave, or maybe beat the wave and start it yourself. So you want to start the trend yourself. So time is even more critical than how much money you're actually paying. And if you have a fixed, let's say, number of employees, or you're dealing with a company that has a fixed number of employees, then you're always limited with that number of employees. You cannot get more. And of course, even if you get more people, sometimes it's just the project by its nature reaches a place where you can, even if you get more people, you cannot win time because there's a lot of dependency. But we're talking in a scenario where there's not a lot of dependency and there's a limited number of people. You can actually optimize and finish faster if you hire more people. And that's the beauty about what we're doing. We have a network of contractors, so we can add whenever is possible, and whenever we find that certain tasks are not dependent to one another, we just give them and spread them out to many developers in a way that each and every one of them, or let's say contractors, are working on their specific task, and then we end up combining them together at the end of the day. So this allows us to gain a lot of time, pay the same amount, because at the end, okay, they're the price of the product is being priced depending on the price of the component, not the rate of the developer. So let's say if a developer who's a very senior developer usually gets paid in the market $40 per hour, if they want to change a color with us, they would actually get paid $5 for changing that color, because they would get paid depending on the value assigned to that component, not more and not less. And same thing for the junior developer, they would get paid the same thing. And of course, the junior developer cannot take the tasks that are that require a more seniority level. That's something that's given. Anyway, so we've really kind of gone through all of the cycle, and we just wanted to share with you our solution, because it's something that we have built and got inspired of after facing all of those issues and realizing all of those limitations in the market, whether with hiring a certain team or with the working directly with freelancers at a very fixed rate per hour. So I hope that you have liked and enjoyed this video. I'll be looking forward to seeing you soon, and stay tuned.